You're tuning into the Active Mom Podcast with physical therapist Dr. Carrie Pagliano, a real mom's guide to all things postpartum return to workouts after baby. If you're a postpartum mom, coach, trainer, or physical therapist looking for answers on how to get back to running, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, you name it, without the fear of pelvic floor issues or doing something wrong, this is the podcast for you. Let's start the show. All right. One of the biggest questions that I get from moms is, how am I supposed to get back to all this stuff when my baby is not sleeping? And that's when you call in somebody like Lexi, the baby sleep coach. She reached out recently and said, hey, I want to talk with your listeners about helping them out with getting your baby to sleep. And I said, yes, ma'am, sign me up. So Lexi, thanks for being on the Active Mom Postpartum Podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and hopefully share my wisdom with all your mom followers.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are in the world, and kind of what got you into kind of coaching moms to help get their babies to sleep.
Yeah. So I am in Colorado, snowy, beautiful Colorado. I am a NICU nurse. I have been a nurse for about 6 years, not always in the NICU. I started out in home health pediatrics. Always knew I wanted to be in the NICU. It just took me a little bit longer to get into an ICU. And then after I worked with a couple amazing families, worked closely with PT and OT and, speech therapies, all that good stuff. For about 3.5 years, I followed with 2 families and their little girls, which was amazing. And then I met the love of my life. He was a rancher out in the eastern plains of Colorado. So that kind of took me away from my job as a home health pediatric nurse. And I worked in the prison system for a little less than a year. That was a cool, amazing experience. Learned a lot, not a long-term career for me. And then I applied to get into the NICU in Denver, and it's been an awesome, amazing experience working closely with moms in the NICU. And my journey to become a sleep consultant, I got pregnant with my first kiddo. She turns 1 this weekend. I can't believe how
Congrats.
fast. Thank you. How fast time has gone. So I've been having fun this week planning her birthday party. But when I was pregnant with her, I have always been somebody who just has always needed a lot of sleep. I don't know why my body has been that way, but my mom always tells me, even as a baby, I just wanted to be like in my crib sleeping. And even like through my adolescent years, I always had an early bedtime because if I don't get a lot of sleep, I get sick. So I was very scared to have a newborn baby and not get a lot of sleep and try and think that I'm going to be sick on top of trying to figure out new motherhood and all that good stuff. So I was determined not to be that quote unquote sleep deprived mom and have that be a normal thing in my life. So I was scrolling through all the mom blogs and, buying all the sleep books so I could have early success with my baby. And I just found like there was so much information out on the internet.
Yep.
It was almost like a lot of it was kind of controversial, like you should do this, but then something else said, oh no, you shouldn't do that because of this reason. I couldn't really find like a lot of good solid evidence-based research on, what I should do with my baby. It was kind of more just everyone's opinion. And so I also, working as a full-time mom, I wanted to cut back on that so I would have a little bit more time raising my kiddo and being more present and at home. That's just kind of what I always saw for my life as being a mom. So I wanted to start like a little side hustle and eventually grow it into a full-time business so I could be a stay-at-home working mom.
We love mompreneurs around here.
Yes, right. And I stumbled across becoming a certified infant and toddler sleep coach, and it like immediately spoke to me. So that night I signed up for the certification course. It was all self-paced. I think I graduated in like 3 weeks. We did assignments and tests and had like a final project that we had to
You
submit
were
and
always an
everything.
A student, weren't you?
Yeah.
You were that girl that
Yes,
was
I
just like,
was.
I am going to ace
Yep.
this.
Yes, I was not much of a procrastination, get it done early and, do my best. And then that was this last summer in May, or I guess it's 2024 now, last year in May. And ever since then, I have never looked back. I absolutely love helping people transform their lives. It's like sleep training your baby totally ripples into so much more other areas
100%. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
other people's lives, and they just
Yeah.
don't really realize that until their baby is actually sleeping.
Yeah.
So,
I'm gonna pause you right there. A lot
yes.
to unpack. First of all,
Sure.
I feel like anybody who works in the NICU, and I was very fortunate years ago to have some great colleagues at Georgetown University Hospital,
Mhm.
PTs, OTs. I had clients who were in nursing staff. You all are amazing.
Thank
We were
you.
fortunate never to have a NICU experience, but
Sure.
those people, those providers
Mhm.
are the bomb because that's so incredibly stressful and you guys are just so supportive and so knowledgeable. So first of all, thank you for that because
Sure.
I
Thank
think for
you.
especially for first time parents,
Yeah.
that's a
Very
lot. That's
scary.
a lot.
Yes. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have like this perfect birth plan set up in your head, and
Yeah.
it you like parents just never imagine that their journey would look like their baby in the NICU. So
No, not at
yeah,
all.
it's
And I think
super hard.
from a recovery perspective too, like in this last year, I had a mom with triplets,
Oh
and
my gosh.
she had one already at home,
Oh my
in
god.
addition to the triplets, because
Yeah.
who plans triplets?
Right.
And it was so interesting because like we were able to rehab a lot on the front end because the
Mhm.
kids weren't home yet.
Yes.
And
Sure.
so, but that as soon as they came home, she's like, I'll see you later. Maybe I'll
Yep.
pop up in a year or so.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. No time for her own rehab.
The other thing that you said that I just was really excited about, and I think again, your background as a NICU nurse that is really important, is your collaboration with PT and OT,
Hmm.
because that is a thing with sleeping that and sleep coaching that I feel like is needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
Um, and I was cracking up a little bit, understanding that my kids are a lot older than yours. I have a
Hmm.
son who'll be 13 in a couple of weeks,
Oh
and
my
he
goodness.
did not sleep till he was 5.
Oh my god.
So when I read in your bio, you're like, "Oh, I sleep trained my own child in a couple of weeks," and I'm just like, "Yeah, right."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this is again sarcastic mom with like, we didn't have resources like you back in the day. I
Hmm.
read all the freaking books. I
Yeah.
did all the things. I listened to my friends who were like, oh, well, just do this. And it was just like, no, girl, this is not his jam. And
Yeah.
I have a colleague who actually lives in oh my gosh, is she in Fort Collins? She goes,
Oh.
Laurel
Mhm.
Prue, she's a PT, and she was talking this year about she just had her child,
Mhm.
sleep issues, and reflexes and primitive reflexes, and started to work with PT and OT and a
Yeah.
sleep consultant. And I was like, dang, I
Mhm.
wish I had that 13
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So can you go a little bit into kind of like what first of all, like there's got to be like a variation of like sleep training, but like when do
Totally.
you
Yes.
know when it's like beyond the basic? Because that we're doing this for like me 13 years ago right now because
Yeah,
I
right?
still have some PTSD
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, so go. Help 13 years ago me.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, we basically just have this basic assessment that the family kind of fills out, like a very detailed questionnaire. That's how I write my sleep plan for every single family, and it's always going to be different, obviously, because no two kids are the same. Um, the way I know that we're having issues and my methods aren't working is things are just going haywire. Um, if I know the parents are being committed and consistent to the method that we're using for their kiddo. And the baby is just not on the trajectory that they should be. I know that there's an issue, and part of my intake form is asking parents like if they're comfortable sharing, because as part of my job I feel like I need to know like their previous medical history and all that good stuff. So if there is like any sleep apnea, if they're breathing through their mouth instead of their nose, especially for babies, any of that good stuff, or if they had like almost a traumatic birth experience, sometimes things like that can bring up sleep issues for these kids that the parents don't even know about. So that's kind of where I start dissecting.
Mhm.
Is it me? Is it the method? Have we pivoted multiple times and still nothing is working?
Mhm.
Let's kind of go down the medical route. And that's where I kind of feel like my background in the baby world kind of helps me a little bit more, helping families diagnose things that they just thought, oh, my kid just can't sleep,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah. With
it's difficult to, I would say, to diagnose excuse me, to diagnose those things.
mhm.
But you just, it's almost just like this feeling inside you, if like you've helped so many families, their sleep training journey with you has gone exactly as planned. And when you get those one or two cases that haven't gone as planned, you just have a little inkling inside of you and you're like, okay, maybe we need to look at something deeper than just the basic, my kid doesn't know how to fall asleep on their own. So that's kind
With
of where I start.
with a typical kid, let's just say, no issues that we know of. When should you start to see some patterns with sleep? Like, because my recollection of all of this is like it's kind of a shit show, honestly, until maybe I started to see signs of a pattern, at least with my second, was closer to that like 8-week mark.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that like what's kind of a normal pattern to start to look for those things?
Yeah. I would say, like, do you mean like to get on a good sleep path?
I mean, even to for somebody to consider, that they need help.
Yeah.
Because I feel like those first couple weeks, you're still like there can be digestive issues, there can be just like so much stuff going
Yes.
on.
Yeah.
Like there can be a lot of stuff to kind of navigate. Like when should you start to be like, hey, my kid should be able to this shouldn't be so hard.
Sure. Yes. 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 Yeah. So I think it kind of depends on a few things, like if your baby is, I co-sleeping for those first, couple months of life, and they're used to being on a soft bed, and then you're trying to transition them to a firm flat mattress in a crib or a bassinet. So I think it depends on the the habits that you've kind of created for, I hate to say it, for that baby.
Mhm.
But I would say even a little bit later, like around 3 months, is when you should really start to see your baby kind of get the hang of being laid down in their crib, being on a firm, flat mattress. Those first 2 weeks of having a newborn, or tell parents all the time, it's survival mode.
Oh
And then
yeah.
after that, you can really start laying healthy sleep foundations. Like I want people to snuggle their baby and hold their baby, because you don't get those newborn, like they grow out of their clothes so fast, and you want to hold that teeny tiny 7-pound baby. So get those snuggles in, but then practice like once a day laying your baby down, because when they are used to being held in squishy arms and then you go to lay them down on a hard mattress, they're not going to like it. Um, so It really depends on how a parent is helping their baby build those healthy sleep foundations from the
Mhm.
very beginning. But I would say, like, probably between the second and third month of life, they should really start seeing their baby if they're having, independent sleep issues, or if they're kind of going in the right direction.
Gotcha.
I hope that makes sense.
So if you have, not that I'm pulling from experience or anything, um, no, like I'm just thinking back. My husband was great. He would kind of handle my son at night and kind of take him down to the basement and get him calmed down. But he
Yeah.
always, he was that kid that it would take 40 minutes to go down for like a 20-minute
Yes.
disaster nap.
Yep.
And it's interesting to be able to, he's almost 13. The kid's been on brand. I'm going to give him props for that. Also
Mhm.
had, some primal reflex issues that we figured out
Mhm.
later on. But like, as a mom, and your kid can't, self-soothe is too simple, but like they
Yeah.
need like tactile support to
Yes.
calm their nervous systems. But like
Mhm.
you and I can have this conversation, be like, oh, it's their nervous system, it's immature, that sort of thing. How
Yeah.
does a mom know when their gut is like, no, they need me to do this? I am
Yeah.
trying to put them down. I am
Mhm.
swaddling, I am doing all the things, but my kid is red faced freaking crying, and
Yeah.
this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do you even know kinda where to start, and how do you find somebody who's like a sleep coach that's gonna be a good fit for
Yep.
your family?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes with finding that sleep coach, doing your research, and finding the coach who is going to meet you where you're at and what you're comfortable with. I meet a lot of parents who check the one question on my intake form: I can't handle any sort of crying. Like, it just sends them. That's probably the biggest question that I need checked is, can you handle some crying?
Yeah.
I don't mind hearing any crying, or some crying. But a lot of parents will check. It just sends them into, like, their stress level increases when their baby is crying.
Mhm.
Obviously, the baby can feel it when a parent is stressed. So that is one huge thing that I meet parents where they're at. And if their baby needs to be rocked, if they're used to being rocked to sleep for 40 minutes, then we are gradually, very, very slowly getting that baby used to just sitting in the rocking chair.
Mhm.
Or instead of rocking, we're walking around the room. So
Mhm.
they still need like some type of motion. We're just switching that motion, gradually taking the band-aid off. We're not going to rip it off, because a lot of babies that young still need very, very hands-on support,
Mhm.
because they're not mature enough to self-soothe,
Right.
and their neurological system just isn't where it needs to be like, oh, mom isn't going to rock me. Okay, I guess I'll just go to sleep. Like, that's not how their brain
Right.
works.
No, God, no. But
They're going to be frantic
yep.
until they get that motion that they need, or, bouncing on a yoga ball. Let's do some other type of motion
Mhm.
to help this baby fall asleep. And then we can gradually, in intervals, take away that motion and help them fall asleep in a still manner. And then transfer that to the crib or bassinet.
Yeah. And I think that's a tricky one too, because I know so many people that were like, all right, we're willing to deal with the crying
Yeah.
if it means that, in a couple days or a week or that sort of thing. And I remember very much going through like, okay, we'll just do a little bit here, that gradual approach. And
Hmm.
in the rear view, obviously, it's a lot easier to see. We definitely needed, some more help and that sort of thing. But like, at what point in that process too should, like, how long should that take? And I know that's an awful question because every kid
No.
is different, but, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are the indicators where you're like, "You know what? you do need to talk. You need to pull in an OT or somebody that's going to be able to help you navigate some of these other issues that, if they are navigated, might help everybody, including you as a sleep coach. Like, what
Yep.
are the indicators, red flags where you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
we need help.
Yeah. If we're really not making a whole lot of progress I work with families for 2 weeks, which is not a very long time. So
Mhm.
we're really getting to work, getting down and dirty, doing, committing every single day, every
Yep.
minute of every day to work on your baby's sleep. So if things aren't great by the end of 2 weeks, I'll tack on another week. And if it's still not great, then that's my red flag of saying, okay, this baby isn't progressing the way we need to.
Yep.
Again, we need to look at different factors that's going on here,
Yeah.
and bring in other professionals, whether
Yeah.
that's a PT, OT, getting chiropractic care for the baby, what have you. Are we maybe a lactation consultant, all that good stuff to help this family, because there's something deeper going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, I mean, I feel like us as pelvic floor PTs, because we're accessing moms far sooner. So I'll see
Yeah.
moms usually anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks
Yep.
postpartum. So we go really early,
Hmm.
knowing that things should start to kind of be easier.
Yeah.
But mom's really clinging to, I can't put my kid down, period.
Yes, the Velcro baby. That's what I call
Yeah. And, I think it's one thing where maybe like an afternoon nap, you can't put them down. Like,
Yes.
I watched a
Yep,
million
yep, yep.
episodes of Mad Men with my oldest,
Yeah.
because that hasn't played out yet, which is great. Thank God it hasn't affected him. But like, we had certain naps that were definitely harder than others. And I
Yep.
think that's pseudo normal, but like when every single
Totally
one,
normal.
and then moms are trying to get these workouts in, and things like that, and they
Hmm.
have no stress relief because that kid is just on them
Yes.
24/7.
Yes.
That's where I'm like, okay, we need to get this figured out, because if
Hmm.
you're not getting sleep, if you're not getting this time separated from them, like, workout is not the focus right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where I feel like we can be really kind of helpful and collaborative with you guys, being like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a priority. Go deal with that first and then come back and
Hmm.
find me, because there's no way you're going to get a workout in if you can't put this kid down of
Absolutely.
no
Yeah.
fault of your own.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you're like, in order for a mom's body postpartum to heal, they need rest and sleep too. And if
mhm.
that's not happening, then
Yeah.
they're not going to a pelvic floor therapist. They're probably not, correct me if I'm wrong, not going to see results like and healing in their body as quickly as, a mom who's getting those good
Yeah.
2, 3,
I
4 hour
mean,
stretches at night.
it's also gonna stress them out because it's just one more
Yeah.
thing that they suck at.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and the
yep.
self-guilt is real.
Yes, oh my gosh, it totally is. Yes, yes.
So when you guys are when you're kind of tackling, let's say it's a kid that has a problem with naps and nighttime. Again,
Mhm.
not from previous experience at all. What will you go after first if the parent has no preference? Like, is it better to
Nighttime.
okay.
Yep, we
And why
always
is that?
go it's just nighttime is easier. The progression of it sounds backwards.
I
It
would
totally
argue
sounds
at
backwards.
2 AM.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right?
I am
Yeah.
not at my best self right now.
Right. Yes. Yes. You have that sleep pressure is built up at night.
Mhm.
It's the progression of uh the easiest from hardest for a baby to sleep is they can conquer a full night of sleep. So I'm talking 10 to 12 hours of straight nighttime sleep before they conquer every single 3 or 4 nap of the day.
Okay, I'm gonna
Um,
pause you 1 second because I need you to unpack a myth here that I remember
okay.
of the
Yes.
quote, "Does your baby, quote, sleep through the night?" And I read
Mm.
somewhere that technically a newborn sleeping through the night is only 5 hours. Is that true?
How how old are we talking? Like I would
Like
say
6 weeks or
3
younger.
6 weeks or younger, I would
Like, what's
say a
sleeping through the night
6
at that point? Yeah.
probably 6 hours. A good rule
Okay.
of thumb that I like to use for families is, um, if they're medically stable, if their weight is at a good spot, if they're like if mom's milk supply is in a good place too, um, if they're 4 weeks, they can get at least 4 out not at least, but at most 4-hour stretches. If they're 5 weeks, we can maybe work to a 5-hour stretch.
Gotcha.
That's not true for every single baby. That's just a average rule of thumb. So if your baby is more or less than average, that's totally normal. Just want to throw that out there.
So
But
that's where I feel like we need a heads up on the terminology, because I
yeah,
remember going into that and people like, "Oh, my baby sleeps through the night." And I wanted to give him like 2 big middle fingers up,
yeah,
because in my head I'm thinking 8 to 10 hours, which
yeah,
that by definition I don't think is actually true. Like, I could have digested, and that probably didn't help with my mental health very much, thinking these kids are
yeah,
sleeping all the way through the night and
yeah,
really it was
no,
only like 5 hours, which
yeah,
again, I totally would have paid for at that point.
yep, yep,
But be clear with the terminology and the expectations up front. So
yes,
we're setting our moms up to not like
right,
hate
right.
themselves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Sleeping through the night at 6 weeks, if your baby's getting a 6-hour stretch, that's great. But
Yeah.
then after that, they're not going to get another 6-hour stretch. So
No.
you get one big long 6-hour stretch, and then after that their bodies go back into, okay, I'm going to eat every 2 to 3 hours.
Got
So
it.
I think that's also there just needs to be clarification, yeah, like you said, around what
Yes.
sleeping through the night means, how old your baby is, what's appropriate for
Yeah.
that age group. Yeah,
Okay. What
for sure.
about and this always drove me nuts too, because it never happened. These moms that put their kids down for the night at like 6:30 p.m. at night versus like 11 at
Yeah,
night.
yeah,
Unpack that for me,
yep,
because that was always
yeah.
a confusion point.
Yes. So the sweet spot for babies 3 months and younger is between 8 and 10 p.m. So when I'm working with a family, I work off of their schedule, and then we make kind of baby's routine and schedule off of there. So if they're not
Got it.
getting home from work till 7 and they're trying to rush and eat dinner, um, baby it isn't going to go to bed at 8 o'clock, because you want to spend time with your baby after you're getting off of work. You want to have a nice family dinner. Um, you might want to sit and watch a couple Netflix shows, then shower, spend time with your hubby, then put baby down.
Got
So
it.
sweet spot, 3 months and younger, I always say 8 to 10 p.m. And then it kind of creeps up to like 7 to 8 p.m.
Mhm.
Um, once you kind of get into those um, older than 4 months old toddlers. One, it depends on how many naps a toddler's taking. If you're down to one nap, bedtime might be a little bit later, like between 8 and 9. So it really just depends on. There's a whole lot that goes into what bedtime looks like, but
Yeah.
for younger newborn babies, a later bedtime is totally normal.
Yeah. I think we got that Ren right on our second. I joke that she's the one that we actually did something right with. Um, that so we would put my son down first, and then I would put her down
Yeah,
after that. So she would be closer to like 10 o'clock. And
yeah.
then she would usually wake up. I think we get the end of like the late, late show or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And do a feed there, and
Yeah.
then, sometime that 4:30, 4 o'clock, whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah, and if,
um,
like, the parents aren't going like, if like, for me, I wanted to go to bed at 8 o'clock just because that's always been my
I do that
MO.
now.
Yeah.
My
I
kids
will
put me to bed.
Yep, right, yes, yeah, so I wanted to go to bed at 8 o'clock, so I would put baby down knowing that it probably wouldn't be a long stretch of sleep that first little bit,
Yep,
and then after that, I would get a longer stretch of sleep, in the middle of the night until early morning. So it
gotcha.
all just really depends on your routine and schedule and what works best for the family.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier kind of digestive issues and things like that. Like how I think that's another one that's really challenging and I think moms really aren't sure whether to talk to a lactation consultant or a sleep
Yeah.
coach or both. And how do you kind of know whether, like, what are the signs that your kid isn't sleeping because of something related to
Like,
that?
yeah, yeah. I would say, like if you're having like a really colicky baby, they're spitting up, they're just not settling after a feed. That's kind of a huge sign. If they, even like an hour after a feed, if they're really fussy, that could be a sign of maybe your baby is a little bit colicky. If they're really gassy, if they don't have regular bowel movements, like a newborn baby is peeing and pooping almost every wet diaper. So if that isn't happening, I would pull in a lactation consultant, for sure, and just
Hmm.
kind of have them dissect with the family, like what's mom's diet? What is there any food allergies or um, you know, anything like that that the mom is having, or if there's any other kids who have food allergies in the family, maybe
Yeah.
baby has it too, or like a milk intolerance, anything like that. Because I have seen just in my nursing career, milk intolerances of these smaller
Hmm.
babies, and mom's like, I'm eating healthy. I'm, only eating my fruits and vegetables and all that, like I'm eating clean and all that good stuff. But there's still something in the milk that doesn't really help baby's
Yeah.
stomach. So I would for sure pull in a lactation consultant. And then if there's any other, kind of start with the basics and then go down our list of who else do we need to talk to.
Yeah. I feel super lucky. I don't know if you know her on Instagram, the Balanced Boob. She was my neighbor, gosh, before we even got
Oh,
married.
awesome. Yeah.
So
My
we
gosh.
go way back. So if y'all are
Yeah.
looking for somebody, Kelly is the bomb.
Yeah.
And she has a massive side of sarcasm, which why I love and
I love
appreciate
it.
her. It's funny too, the things that kind of flash back in your head. I was not, it sounds stupid in the rear view.
No.
I had a C-section with my first,
Okay.
unplanned, not comfortable.
Yep.
We would middle of the night would try and set my son up to do like side nursing so I
Mhm.
could like rest a little bit and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we would both fall asleep.
Mhm.
And then about 45 minutes later, guess who's all pissed off because he didn't get burped?
Yeah.
And I was of the mindset we're like, "Oh, no, we can totally skip this." For those
Yeah.
of you that don't know, you cannot skip burping.
No.
Like,
No, no.
they won't let you, and suck it up because you've
Yeah.
gotta figure that out. I don't care if your
Yeah.
kid falls asleep nursing, you need to wake their sorry little butts up
Yeah.
and burp them,
Uh-huh.
or they will wake for you.
Yes. Yes. That it will be so uncomfortable for them to have that big gas bubble and yeah.
Yes, and he
Mhm.
would just wake up, like, dying because it
Yeah.
hurt, and once he
Yeah.
burped, it would
Sure.
be
He was,
fine, but I
yeah.
look back on that and I'm like, a couple of those little it took me so long to
Mhm.
realize those little
Yep.
things.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like just those basic pieces of information somehow get lost.
They get
I
lost.
felt like I
Yes.
was pretty educated going
Yeah.
in, but clearly
Right?
I was not.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree. There
but
is just not enough education around all of it in motherhood.
yeah,
And yeah, that's why I appreciate your podcast so much.
with, um with when you have, um, parents that you're trying to help them navigate nighttime,
Hmm.
and obviously the baby needs to eat, and
Yes.
let's say baby falls asleep on the boob, do you
Hmm.
have recommendations of like, okay, this is how we get through the feeding to make sure that they get enough to eat, that they get burped, that they get changed, like, and that they stay alert,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that they get enough to get that next patch of
Right.
sleep? Like, what are your
Right.
thoughts as far as that goes?
Yeah. So a baby that's um their MO is to automatic like nurse for a couple minutes and then fall asleep on the boob.
Mhm.
I am teaching parents how to keep them awake for the feed, like stimulating, tickling their back, rubbing their armpit. just to, like, a baby can have their eyes closed and still be eating. That's
Mhm.
that's different than them falling asleep.
Yep.
So kind of teaching them what the difference is, and if they need to pull them off, do a diaper change in the middle of switching between sides. I had to do that actually with my own baby. She would fall asleep after like 10 minutes of nursing on one side, which was good, but then I could not for the life of me get her latched on the other side. So
Oh.
I if she woke up, I would skip the diaper change. We would start on one side. Um, if she was getting super drowsy and falling asleep, then I would do the diaper change in the middle of switching between breasts, and she would obviously wake back up, and we'd kind of start again with the next side. So I think diaper changes can be a huge tool in helping wake them up, or even burping. Burping
Yep.
is a huge one. Um, I like to teach parents how to burp with their baby on their lap instead of up on their shoulder. You
Yep.
can kind of like support their chin and head with one hand, and then you're burping with the other while they're actually sitting on your lap. And you
Yep.
can do a lot of back stimulation, which wakes a baby up. That's exactly how we stimulate a baby after a vaginal and C-section delivery, so a baby can start breathing. So, stimulating a baby by rubbing their back can be a great way to wake that baby back up so they can finish eating. Because one of the biggest, most important things is getting a good full feeding, no matter
Mhm.
what time of day it is, so your baby can get a better stretch of sleep, whether that's for nap time or
Yep.
nighttime stretch of sleep. So that's a huge deal. Snacking is not good. Your baby, obviously, like, we do a lot of education between is what snacking is versus what a good full feeding is as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a picture that my husband took. It went, and this was the first couple of weeks we were home with my daughter. Every time she latched, I would just fall asleep. It
Yeah.
was literally like this. It's all the crazy hormones and that kind of
Right.
stuff, and it would happen in the hospital too.
Oh my god.
And you're like, of course, you're not supposed to like hold your baby if you're going to fall asleep. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
no, I
Yeah.
totally wasn't sleeping. Totally was sleeping. So my
Yeah.
husband has this great picture of my daughter and I just like totally passed
Oh
out.
my gosh, I love it.
But yeah, we figured that out with her. We very similar burping to what you're talking about. As is, I had her supported on the chin, patting on the back, but she was bouncing on my knee, so we had
Mhm.
that extra little bit
Yep.
of
Yeah.
mobility to get that pressure out.
Yep. Yep.
And I used to joke around. I was like, oh, maybe if I had a third, I'd have this all figured out. But I'm totally not tempting fate there. But
Yeah.
so kind of looking ahead a little bit, because I feel like moms kind of get in the weeds, and you have these changes, these bumps, the growing weeks or the learning ones, or whenever they start to
Mhm.
change patterns. Like, when do you start to see one, kind of what does that first sort of nap pattern look like? And then as moms are looking ahead, because
Mhm.
we project that our, till the kids are 16, oh my God, are they
Mhm.
going to nap every 2 hours? Are we ever
Yeah.
going to get out of the
Yeah.
house? Like, what
Uh-huh.
is that pattern? What do we want it to look like? And then generally from a nap perspective, like, how old are kids when they're finally growing out of naps,
Mhm.
period?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I start off by setting realistic expectations around naps. They will be the hardest thing for your baby to conquer. Um, you won't see naps really start to consolidate around till 6 months. So
Mhm.
those first 6 months, you're just practicing, you're giving yourself grace. You're I always say practice is progress with naps. As long as you're practicing every single day with those naps, your baby will get the hang of it. Um, as far as like the progression of naps, I like to follow age appropriate wake windows, and an eat, awake, sleep schedule. So we're kind of breaking that feed to sleep association with those babies. So
Mhm.
when they wake up from a nap, we're feeding them, we're doing some playtime, and then we're putting them to sleep. Um, as far as like number of naps go, as early as like, I would say 3 months, you can for sure have your baby on some type of nap schedule. They might have 4 naps throughout the day, and then they might need a 5th cat nap to get to that 10 p.m. bedtime. And then as they get older, you're going to see them being awake a little bit longer. And that's when your wake windows are going to start lengthening. Your naps are going to be dropping. And then for toddlers, my rule of thumb is always 3 years old. 3 years old is a good place to evaluate if your kiddo really needs the nap, or if they don't. And then I always like to replace nap time with quiet time. So you're still getting that separation, instead of completely taking out nap time and that destimulation time for a kid during the day is huge. You're going to have probably a better bedtime if you give your kid some time to wind down in the middle of the day, because they're just go, go, go all day long. And it's going to be harder at bedtime. So I would say 3 years old is a good place to evaluate if your kid still needs a nap or not. And if they do until 4 years old, that's totally fine.
First of all, you're very lucky.
Yes, you're very lucky. Take advantage of that hour or two that you're getting in the middle of the day. Yeah. It's just harder, I think, when we get into the school age, like you're starting kindergarten. Your kid's not going to be able to take a nap during the day. So that 3 years old is a good place, a good rule of thumb place to start.
Yeah. And I think all this too, it's different for everybody in that, like our experience, I was working a couple days a week. I was home a couple days a week. I prayed to God that my son would take a nap when I was pregnant with my daughter. I was like, I need a nap. I don't care if you do, but I will literally lay down on your floor so that I can get a nap. So I had a lot of those. But the other piece of advice I always give too is if your kid is going to daycare, let those people do their magic and duplicate it at home. Let those people do their magic and then keep that, whatever they teach your kid, keep that on the weekends as much as possible, because those people are freaking amazing. We didn't have that, but I think that's where it's hard too, because you've got some kids that somebody else sleep trained their kid. They've done it for a million times, and and you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But then I also remember too, my son was in preschool. I think he was God, he must have been 3.5, 4. And preschool was over at 1. And that's when my daughter was 1, and she was supposed to go down for a nap right around that time. So the key was trying to keep her awake till I picked him up and got him home. And then I could put him down because I didn't want to carry her asleep and so on. And so one day pick him up. We're driving home. It's not that far. Ooh, someone's awake.
Yeah, she's awake.
Not that far home. And my son, he's like, Analia is not taking a nap. We're going to play. And she's barely 1.5, maybe at this point. And she's like, no nap. And I was like, oh shit. And that was the end of it. And that was their first time that they collaborated to overthrow the power in our house. And I knew I was screwed. And so second kids, sometimes you get what you get.
Yes. You got to, let the chips fall where they may. Yes. Yeah.
So understanding, we will delegate out when possible, but sometimes it's not up to us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to go with the flow, and that's okay.
All right. At the end of every episode, we ask everybody a bunch of questions. And since you have survived your first year, first of all, congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
It's more, the first birthday is more for the parents than I think it is for the
kid.
100%. We had my oldest, I tell the story, it was in a bar. We had it from 11 to 1. The owner of the bar was a college friend of my husband. He's like, look, just be out by 2 because people don't want to know the consequences of their actions. And I was like, yes.
I love that. That's funny.
All right. Don't know if you're doing anything, but book you're reading or podcast you're listening to right now.
Of course, I'm listening to your podcast. I don't have a ton of time to read a whole lot of books right now. I haven't been a huge book reader. Except for when I had to in school. But I'm listening to, some sleep consultant podcasts, Jane Haven's Becoming a Sleep Consultant. And then I have a business coach. So of course I listen to her.
We all
Her
listen to
name,
business stuff.
yes. I listen to Anderson, Ambitious Coach. So those are probably the top 3 that I'm listening to right now.
Awesome. I will give you a
Yeah.
tip. Audiobooks I have found this year, and it is life
Yes.
altering.
No, so many girls at work tell me to do the audiobook because
Yep.
we have a book club at work, and I'm like, I don't have time to sit down and read a book, but
No.
I have over an hour drive to and from work. So I'm like, I
Oh,
need to get into the
yep.
audiobooks for sure.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Well, when you pick one, you let us know what your first one is.
Yes, I will. Yep.
All right. What's the favorite activity since becoming a mom?
Oh gosh. Probably our daily stroller walks.
Yeah.
That just getting outside and getting that fresh air probably has become one of my favorite things for sure.
Yeah. And then how do you do that in the snow, by the way?
If the sidewalks aren't clear, we can't really do it. I might put her in the backpack and just bundle her up. But yeah, I feel like my stroller that I have is pretty. We put it in 4-wheel drive and we just go.
Oh, I live in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Live in the right. I'm originally from upstate New York, so like snow, I
Oh,
love. It's my friend.
yes.
I've been in
Yeah.
DC over 20 years, and we could use some.
Yeah.
Okay, one piece of advice for new moms.
I would say give yourself grace. Everyone
says that.
There's so much out there saying you should do this, you should do that, don't do this, don't do that. You know what's best for your baby. You are the mom of your baby for a reason. And if you have a different way of doing something, embrace that. And if it's working for you, embrace it.
I love that you've learned that at 1 year because I wish I had learned that. Yeah. Who's somebody in your space that we should know about? Like who's filling your cup up right now?
Oh gosh. I would say I recently came across an Instagram, and the stupid, Instagram algorithm, like if you're liking someone more, they show it up more.
Right.
And if you don't, they kind of disappear. She kind of
who does Zuckerberg think you should like?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. She kind of popped back up on my Instagram recently. Her name is, she's a little bit of an influencer, I would say. She has a big following, but she's amazing. Super down to earth. Her name is Lindsay Gurk. Gurk. She has like a super just great perspective on life and postpartum and being a mom. I don't know if you've ever heard the term "get your pink back," like with the flamingos. She didn't coin the term, but she kind of brought it back to life. She did some research. I don't know if she just loves flamingos, but she did some research on flamingos and found out that mother flamingos lose their pink. So like if you see like a white gray flamingo, those are usually the moms because they're caring for their young. So, and she kind of translated that we give so much to our kids that we kind of lose who we are. We kind of lose our coloring, but then once our kids will get a little bit older, we start getting our coloring back. So her kind of motto is get your pink back. So I just love that. I really gravitated towards it. So I think it's a great message for all moms out there.
Nice. And if you want to know more about flamingos, there's actually a really cool National Geographic series on Disney Plus that just came out about journeys, where they track the migration of different animals across the globe, and they do look at flamingos. So if you want to know more about flamingos, Disney Plus.
Awesome.
I am a plethora of information. Okay. And then for you, finally, what does it mean to you to be an active mom in postpartum?
Totally. I think it's more so my mental health and being like showing up. If I'm able to be active, I'm a better person. I can show up better for not just only my kids, but for my husband and the rest of my family. So I think that's probably the most important thing is being an active mom in postpartum for me.
Love it. Love it. And ironically, the guest I'm interviewing after you is a psychiatrist. So
oh my gosh, there you go.
Oh yeah, no, mental health, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Yes.
Lexi Thompson, thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to find out about more about sleep coaching, and chat with Lexi, you can find her on Instagram, Lexi_the baby sleep coach. She's over on Instagram. Lexi, again, congrats on getting through that first year,
Thank
and
you.
thanks so much for sharing all your know-how on the show.
Yes, thank you so much, Carrie. It was fun.
Did you enjoy the podcast? If so, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and tell a friend to do the same. Are you a postpartum mom or postpartum pro wanting to know more about getting back to running after baby? Check out all my free goodies on carriepagliano.com. This podcast represents the opinions of Dr. Carrie Pagliano and her guests to the show. The content should not be taken as medical advice and is for entertainment purposes only. Always consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.